This was the real-life Jigsaw, and it's truly horrifying. In 1984, John Spilsbury, a wealthy businessman, vanished without a trace. But when police searched his mansion, they uncovered something far more sinister. His home was filled with sadistic traps, spiked walls, poisoned locks, and floors rigged to collapse into pits of sharpened metal. Investigators found disturbing journals where John described his twisted obsession, testing people's will to survive by forcing them into deadly games. Over the next decade, 5 victims were discovered, each enduring unimaginable horror before their deaths. One man was forced to solve a puzzle while his body slowly burned from the inside. Another woman had to choose between cutting off her own arm or being crushed alive. Every victim was given a brutal choice: endure excruciating pain or die a horrifying death. Police suspected John Spilsbury, but they could never prove it. He was gone, like a ghost. But here's the part that will haunt you. Rumors say he's still out there hiding in the shadows, setting new traps, watching and waiting for his next victim. Could you survive the real-life Jigsaw's deadly game? This woman is not as innocent as she looks. In 1974, in the quiet town of Little Stewart, there was a woman named Mary Juan, but she was known as Little Mary. Mary had a twisted hobby. Neighbors whispered that anyone who crossed her path mysteriously vanished. No one ever suspected her, until one day, a young boy named Jimmy disappeared after delivering groceries to her house. His family searched, but the only clue was a single grocery bag left on her doorstep. The police questioned Mary, but she was calm, offering tea to the officers. They found nothing in her home and moved on. But one night, a neighbor saw something terrifying. Mary was digging in her garden under the full moon, burying something. The next morning, a perfectly tended flower bed appeared in its place. Months later, more people vanished, always with Mary being the last person to see them. When the truth finally came out, it was far worse than anyone imagined. Mary had been using her victims as fertilizer for her garden. But when authorities stormed her house, Mary had vanished, and what they saw when they entered her bedroom was truly horrifying. This man ate 300 burgers in one day, and it ended horribly. In 1983, a man named Chewy Beefus walked into a small-town McDonald's and placed an order that stunned everyone: 300 burgers. The workers thought it was a joke at first, but Chewy wasn't laughing. He paid up front, pulled out a chair, and started eating, burger after burger. Rumors spread. Locals crowded around the windows, watching him devour the food at an unnatural pace. His eyes grew darker, and his skin paler, but he kept eating. Some said they saw his jaw unhinge like a snake's. After he ate the 300th burger, something strange happened. He got up and went to the bathroom. Strange noises came from the bathroom, and out of nowhere, dirty water started coming out under the door. He had clogged the bathrooms. All the other customers started running out of the restaurant. Only the manager remained. And when he went inside, Chewy was gone. The manager found his receipt on the floor, and in there was written, "He is still hungry." To this day, no one knows what happened to Chewy or what he did in the bathroom. This American woman was pure evil. In 1953, in the small town of Boomersville, Florida, Anita Deck was the perfect housewife, super pretty and with a warm smile for everyone in the neighborhood. But Anita hid a dark secret. 6 of her previous husbands disappeared without a trace. Still, no one dared question Anita. One night, her new husband, Frank, noticed something strange. Anita never ate at dinner. She always pretended to eat her food, but as Frank grew suspicious, he discovered her hidden diary, revealing a chilling truth. Anita wasn't just killing her husbands, she was feeding their remains to the guests at her famous dinner parties. Frank tried to escape, but it was too late. That night, the doorbell rang for another dinner party, and Anita greeted her guests with her usual smile. As they sat down to eat, Anita leaned in and whispered to Frank, "Don't worry, darling, you're next." At that moment, Frank found the bathroom as an excuse to finally escape. He managed to reach the police station and inform them of what was going on. Once the police got there, the house was empty, but when the police searched the basement, the story was much darker than they knew. This American cop was pure evil. In 1965, an officer named Harry Kane was a cop everyone trusted in the small town of Blandford, Arkansas. People called him the nicest guy in town, and he lived up to it, on the surface. But behind closed doors, Harry had a secret. None of the criminals he arrested ever made it to jail. One night, a young rookie officer named Justin Time noticed something odd. Harry never wrote reports. He joked that paperwork was for losers, but Justin couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Curious, Justin followed Harry one night when he took a drunk driver into custody. Instead of heading to the station, Harry drove into the woods. Justin watched from the shadows as Harry dragged the handcuffed man from the car and led him to an old, abandoned cabin. Inside there were rows of jars, each with a name tag. Harry opened one, and the man screamed as Harry stuffed him into the jar, sealed it, and calmly placed it on the shelf. Horrified, Justin stepped back, accidentally snapping a twig. Harry froze, then slowly turned toward the noise. With a calm smile, he said, "Sometimes I keep them close, so they don't get out of hand. A jar a day keeps the crime away." Thankfully, Justin managed to get away and report everything he saw. But by the time police got to the cabin, Harry was gone. The officers opened the jars, and what they saw was pure horror. This ice cream shop owner's secret ingredient was truly disturbing. Hugh Mungus was the owner of a very successful ice cream shop called the Sugar Rush in Miami during the 1980s. He was a local celebrity in the area, even appearing in a Bee Gees music video. Everyone loved him, and his famous saying, which was "My milkshakes brings all the boys to the yard." For some reason, there was just something about his ice cream that would always leave you wanting more. Many of his customers would come by several times a day, every single day. When people would ask why his ice cream was so good, he would always say, "It's my secret ingredient." One day, a local food inspector would come into the shop in disguise and order just a basic ice cream cone for a reasonable price of $69. He really enjoyed the ice cream, but didn't understand the hype surrounding it. The inspector would go home that night and go to bed, but would quickly be awoken by a severe craving of ice cream. The craving was so bad that he drove to the ice cream shop at 3 in the morning even though they were closed. When he arrived at the Sugar Rush, he would quickly see the ice cream shop owner in the back alley of the shop next to the dumpster with a suspicious man. At this point, the food inspector was undetected by the two men until his tummy started gurgling, causing Hugh Mungus and the suspicious man to stare directly at him. This evil lawyer killed his own clients. In the 1960s, in the small town of Borington, Indiana, there was a lawyer named Gol Sudman who had never lost a case. But what no one knew was the dark secret behind his success. His clients always walked free, but they would mysteriously vanish days after the trial. One day, a desperate widow named Anita Bath came to him, pleading for help after her husband was wrongfully accused of murder. Gol took the case. She sold everything she owned to pay him, trusting he would save her family. But after Gol won the case, her husband disappeared. It turns out Gol wasn't just defending his clients. He was using their cases as sacrifices to a twisted deal he made with someone or something darker. Every time he won, an innocent soul vanished. Sure, they didn't go to prison, but they vanished. When the woman complained to Gol and asked where her husband is, he said, "You asked me to save your husband from prison by any means possible, and I have done that, but your husband is gone." 3 years later, the woman finally came out and reported her husband as missing, but the lawyer was nowhere to be found. Investigators came to the conclusion that the clients were either dead or sent out of the country, being used as slaves by the people Gol made deals with, the same people who would make sure he wins every case. This is the dark history of the Minions. In 1967, New York City, there was a man named Phil Mycrack. He lived in an old, decaying mansion at the end of Blackwell Street. People whispered that no one had seen Phil in years, but strange noises came from his basement late at night, like gears grinding in the dark. One summer night, a young kid named Kevin decided to find out for himself. He snuck into the house, creeping down into the basement. What he saw would haunt him forever. Dozens of small, yellow men, wearing overalls and goggles, were laboring frantically, assembling something enormous. In the center of the room was Phil, barking orders. They were constructing what looked like a massive doomsday device. Kevin bolted, barely escaping unseen, and told his parents everything. But when they called the police, no one believed him. They said Kevin was making up stories to get attention. For months, everything seemed quiet. Then, out of nowhere, one of Phil's creatures escaped, limping to a neighbor's house and begging for help. Only then did authorities raid Phil's home. Inside, they found exactly what Kevin had described, an underground bunker filled with machines and a half-finished weapon. Phil was arrested, but not before he made a chilling statement. "You stopped me this time, but they'll find another. They always do."